Hello, I am Cher Grieving, and this is my Module 6 case study for EDL 954 District Finance. Can't we work this out? I have slides for each section that was outlined in the rubric presented in the module. And the first section is to summarize what we know. First of all, we know that the governor has announced a 5% budget cut. This was announced in the spring before the following fiscal school year. We also know that the board had already approved a 5% cost of living raise for the certified teachers for the following school year before this announcement of a budget cut was made. And remember that raises for certified teachers are within the negotiated agreement. So that means the two groups had met, come to conclusion, and the board had approved on a 5% cost of increase on their salary. We also know that a committee was formed when this budget cut was announced. The committee was formed to make adjustments to programs to help make ends meet, and I'll talk more about the committee later and what kind of adjustments were discussed. We know that the board and superintendent did receive suggestions from patrons within the community on the program adjustments. This was done at a board meeting. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Section 2, report any legal or ethical issues. First of all, the board has approved 5% raise for teachers within a negotiated agreement. Legal and ethical, can we take this back? Can this be revisited? Can you open up negotiated agreements once it's been approved upon by the board? We know that the superintendent is challenged to shave off the budget to allot for proposed budget cuts directed from the governor. What is legal and what is going to be ethical with his plan, with her plan. And then finally, a committee I talked about earlier was formed, consisting of 2 office personnel, a teacher from each building, and the president of the PTO, the Parents and Teachers Organization, to strategically reduce the budget by adjusting programs that might be vital for students to excel within the schools. I'll talk about the programs later, but legal and ethical, first of all, the committee that is formed, something to think about is the personnel that is representing that committee. Section 3, synthesize what has happened in one sentence. My sentence says this: the governor has proposed a 5% reduction in the budget for the following fiscal school year, and as a district leader, I must be financially responsible to propose budget cuts by adjusting programs and services that may have an adverse effect on students while still upholding an approved agreement that offers an increase to teacher salaries by 5%. Section 4, synthesize the facts. I have 3 subjects I'm going to talk about: people, place, and programs. These 3 subjects were outlined in the rubric for Section 4. First of all, people. We know that we're talking about a group of people within an area that have established positive relationships between the school and community. We know that the teachers are supportive of the students and families within their community. We know that there is a low turnover with staff, as outlined in the case study, and that the patrons are primarily blue-collar workers who often socialize together and provide support for one another. We know that the place is possibly an urban-suburban school district. There was a school board meeting that was held where more than 100 patrons were present to offer their suggestions and opinions. And then we know that the program consists of a 5% budget reduction announced by the governor, and that a committee made up of who I had mentioned in the previous slide proposed adjustments to alter the athletic programs, the music program, and transportation to allot for proposed budget cuts. We know that they have talked about reducing athletic programs, and then we know that the patrons offered to provide money for those athletic programs and uniforms and coaches. We know that the committee talked about cutting the music program, and that the group of patrons offered to find a volunteer person, community member, to take the place of a music teacher so that the music program could continue on. And that falls back on the legal and ethical side slide that I had. We all know that volunteers cannot be in charge of the music program within a school as long as it is a classroom and students are present. We also know that they propose transportation cuts to have families pay in order to have their students transported, those that live outside of the 2.5 mile radius of the school district. But instead of offering free transportation for everyone, having those families pay. So the three programs that are adjusted, that have been asked to be adjusted to possibly cut enough funds, would be athletics, music, and transportation. Those are the facts from the case study. In section 5, when I review and prioritize the information, I need to get a couple more bullet points here. First of all, I as a district leader want to visit with the finance director at KSDE. Who for Kansas is Dale Dennis, and I've been attending the superintendent calls every week by Randy Watson and finance director Dale Dennis. But I think my first phone call would be to Dale, and it would be, hey Dale, what are your recommendations? What are the possible waivers that are available, relief packages, grant money? We know that Kansas schools have just gone through hard times with COVID, and the amount of relief money and grant money, so to speak, that is available is kind of unbelievable, so in a way that I know there are applications, you have to apply, you have to have proof of how you're spending those funds, but I just can't hardly believe that the governor with the state approval is going to come in and cut a budget for the following fiscal year by 5%. That's a lot of money on a given school district's budget. So my first phone call would be to Dale. Say, hey, what's going on, and what are your plans? KSD personnel at KSD is amazing, and they always have plans ahead of announcements. I would collaborate with other task force groups, area superintendents, of course. Hey, what are you doing? What are your thoughts, your ideas? I would look at expanding that committee that consisted of only 2 office personnel, teachers, and a parent representative. We need more people on that committee. We need more people representing other stakeholders on that committee. Can we open up the negotiated agreements? You hate to do that because I know a huge chunk of your salary. I think at my special ed co-op, 80% of our budget is salary, and huge percent of your budget is salary. And we have to maintain teachers. We can't recruit teachers. We can't, let alone maintain. We can't even get them to come to our district. So you just hate to touch the negotiated agreement for a teacher raise in this case. And then we need a board meeting to discuss contingency funds, because most districts have contingency funds. At my special ed co-op, we have carryover, and it's a pretty large cushion of carryover, but it is there to meet crises such as this. So I think school districts could look at contingency funds to help get them through. Section 6, we're going to identify our options and consequences. So we know the options presented in the case are the athletic programs, music programs, and transportation, altering and adjusting and reducing those. Some other options that I'm thinking of is reduction in force. Our classroom size is pretty small. We could possibly look at combining classrooms, putting our first and second grades together, third and fourth. Is that ideal for students? Probably not. But it would increase class size. It would increase cooperative learning. Pay to play, I've heard this being mentioned. In order to play a sport, the athlete and their families must pay a fee. Um, Sometimes they even are in charge of transporting themselves to the contest, to the competitions, or to practice. There are no buses involved. Maintenance on school buildings maybe have to put on hold. I know the large percent of school budgets is in salary and in insurance, and what do we need to do here? How do we look at that and adjust that and possibly lower that to get us by? Section 7, evaluating our options. So we have our options on the previous slide. Now to evaluate them. I think the things listed in red here are imperative. They are very important for a district leader to get through something such as a 5% reduction in budget. Communicate. Superintendents have to be upfront and communicate with stakeholders. Your leadership is important as you are to gather as much information as you can before coming before a group. My next slide says, be prepared with a plan. Listen first. You're going to come up to the group. You're going to come within the group and before the group. And it's important, I think, to listen first. Otherwise, why do you have the group? Listen first. Make sure they understand that you're on their side and you'll have their buy-in. Make them feel valued. And then have a plan so that you can share your thoughts in the form of the plan. Be the leader. Collaborate and learn and participate and join in conversation with as many other superintendents, district and state officials as you can. And that's one thing I've appreciated during school closure because of COVID is all of the collaboration that has happened among task force groups, district leaders that has especially been provided by KSDE. Randy Watson and his crew has just been tremendous. And why haven't we had this all year long? All the years before. It might be something that doesn't end. It's just the communication, the leadership that is being shown is valued by district leaders. District leaders have a chance to collaborate or maybe just listen to see what others are doing. And then when you're choosing your best option and implementing your decisions, we need to make sure that it's based on data, facts, not emotion. When we start talking about cutting programs that might be valuable for kids, that's huge emotions for students and parents. And, there's going to be threats of taking their child elsewhere to go to school. And those are going to be hard decisions to make. But I think if you continue to communicate with those stakeholders, your community people, your committees, your parents, all stakeholders involved, as long as you're communicating and telling the why is very important. This isn't just my decision as a district leader. This is what's been handed to us. This is what we need to do, and this is why. And then always value input anytime it's given to you. I think that's very important. Listen, listen, listen. So this case study was very knowledgeable for me. I've enjoyed kind of reading and researching and asking my superintendent some questions. I feel like we've been a little bit in a crisis and a crunch with COVID, and we've learned how to kind of collaborate and form task force and listen to each other. So my standards are that we need to, in order to successfully complete a district level leadership preparation program, we need to understand and demonstrate and promote the current and future success and well-being of each student. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. We're here for the students. When you start talking about programs that are going to affect the students, you're really, it's a touchy subject, and so it has to be well thought through, well communicated, and opinions valued by all. Component 6.2 says that program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to develop, communicate, implement, and evaluate data-based district resourcing plan and support in schools while developing their plans. So anyway, thank you for listening. Again, I've enjoyed this model and look forward to many more learning opportunities.